Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Sorry for the delay there. We just had some computer stuff issues, but we're here. It's Friday, and we've got a game 5 tonight. We've got a potential elimination tomorrow night. We'll talk about that in a little while, but we'll start with the pre-show as always. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, so just a little quick one. Courtney Cronin writes for ESPN, I guess covers the Bears. And it looks like their chairman, George McCaskey, on the day 3 of the draft, actually umpired in a high school baseball game because he's part of like a youth sports movement in his town. And they saw that there was a problem with the umpiring schedule. And he volunteered to umpire, but he's like, but it's day 3 of the draft. But luckily, the Bears didn't have many picks. So they only had 4 picks.
They didn't have a pick after the 4th round.
Right. So he went there, and then they did actually do that.
Yeah, they traded. They traded, yeah.
Down, and so somebody told them the pick. But this guy actually umpired a high school baseball game, and he's the owner of the Bears. And I got to give this guy credit. That is an amazing thing to do because, umpires, for one, they don't make a lot of money when they do games. I'm very nice to them in softball, even when we're paying them because they're coming out there and they're helping out everybody. But just imagine if a high school baseball game didn't happen, how the kids would be. So I got to applaud that guy, and really nice article too.
I always say in college, in the summer to earn extra money, I always had 3 or 4 jobs. I umpired and then I sold my blood at the blood bank, and selling my blood was easier.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
especially if you had a rare vintage there, Kev. I remember I seeing I think it was like A negative or something like that you could get $75 a pint, and I'm like, gee, that's not bad. You give
I'll give you 4 gallons.
I never thought of selling my blood ever. That's interesting. I never thought about it.
Mine's extra sweet because I am.
It was actually quite lucrative. So, back in the day, it was the 1970s. So,
good old blood.
So Kev, you wanted to touch on what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I wasn't here the other day when it came down that they were going to bring in the Negro Leagues into the statistics, and I was just going to make a point on it. As a human being, I'm happy that there's more respect being paid to the Negro Leagues. I'm a big baseball fan, and I followed. Kind of what has been going on with the debate on that, and the wonder of Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige and all the top players. But the point I think that's a little bit lost is nothing changes. Absolutely nothing. Because because of discrimination, we didn't get to see those players against other players. So the fun of baseball is being able to debate. Compare, is this player better than that player? And we still can't do that. Nothing that happened with that decree changes the debate. We can say move Josh Gibson ahead on some of the records and everything, but we can't say he was better than this player or that player. And that's unfortunate that we can't have the fun of that. And it should be fun. I know a lot of people get heated about these things, but to me, it should just be fun. I'm glad they did it. And I think it's just one more layer of respect for that was long overdue, but absolutely nothing changes. We're going to put them in the record book, which is great. We'll let them, you can see the records and how they would have fit in the thing. But in terms of comparison, that doesn't help us. We just don't know.
It only took 100 years.
Yeah,
that's great.
There's progress. Yeah, but and Russ, I don't know if it was you or it was somebody in the chat had brought up the WHA NHL argument.
Well, it was somebody in the chat, but that was we were on all together one day when I said I thought they should combine those stats. I did,
but they never will.
They never will.
At least in that case, we have had a general idea of how good those players were because most of them, not all, but most of them had been in the NHL before or went to the NHL after. So we have a general idea of how they fit into the hockey. But the Negro Leagues are so unique because we really don't.
But I had pointed out, Kev, in 19, I don't know, it was like 30 something, or maybe he was even 40 something. One year in the Negro Leagues, they drew 3 million fans.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, it was a remarkable, accomplishment. And they had night games before the major leagues did. They did a lot of great things, and we know for sure from anecdotal evidence, people who saw that it was a good, high caliber, baseball. These guys were talented players, and there were some, exhibitions where they ended up,
barnstorming stuff.
Barnstorming, yeah. So I mean, we have some of that, but not enough to be, to have to maximize your fun, to be able to compare and see where they kind of fit. Which
and that's the argument of people who are advocating against doing it, because you don't really know how to gauge the quality of the league, as opposed. Now, granted, Major League Baseball would have been much better had Josh Gibson, had Satchel Paige, had Papa Bell been in there. But we know it's documented, the quality of the major leagues up until a certain, throughout. Whereas we have an accurate documentation of how good 1 through 25 the Negro League teams were, and that's where some people are saying, okay, these stats, I'm skeptical whether they should count, whether it's apples for apples type of comparison.
No, that's fair. Just to answer the chat room to Dan B. Yeah, so Alex Ovechkin would have to play probably 10 more years to catch Gordie Howe if they included the WHA stats. But, why shouldn't he have to? Why do you think Gordie Howe's goals shouldn't count from this other league? Because the minute he went back to the NHL, he was scoring again. So, I think he was going to score in the NHL this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, he scored at 52 years old. He had 15 goals, 16, whatever it was, 14, 15, 16.
I mean, he was going to score no matter where he was. So really, he should be the goal leader, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's right. And his statistics were very much consistent with how he produced at the NHL level.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's kind of an apple. The comparing the Negro Leagues merging of statistics is an apples and oranges comparison to the WHA merging, because at least in that case, we really did sort of know how it fits. But even though that Mike's point is a valid one about we don't know really what those statistics mean, that's okay. I mean, if you want to put them in with the major leagues, all that really does is, when we turn to the record book, we have a general idea of where those players, where they performed at their level. So it's good that they're there and we see that. It's not
for the everyday players. It's really so you can kind of gauge where the greats were as far as how great were they.
Yeah, where they would be. But I mean, if you want to sit back and think, well, yeah, but was the competition as good? Yeah, that's fine. You can do that, but at least we have an awareness now that's created by them sitting there among the statistics of the major leagues. So,
all right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, May 31st, 2024.
I'm Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com and Sportsology.com.
Kevin Allen, Detroit Hockey Now.
And I'm Michael Agello, and just plain old Hockey Buzz. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, although I do write for the Hockey News, so there you go. Plug. Okay, I don't want to talk specifically about last night's game.
Yeah, but let's move into the stuff first and then do the games kind of last, because we all kind of know what's kind of going on there. But I want to talk a little bit about, I read this interesting article, and it actually, you could have knocked me over with a feather, and I want to especially get Russ's thought on this too. Jimmy Murphy wrote a story about whether or not the Boston Bruins could get a first-round pick for Ullmark in a trade. Now, that seems to me, yeah, they'll get a first-round pick. And he quoted an unnamed executive saying, well, probably, but maybe not. It depends on the circumstances, depends on, who's in competition. They kind of know what was that the Bruins are trying to move his salary off their their cap. So where are they? But I believe they will get a first round pick and then some. But I don't know. What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I think it depends on the team and where they're picking. So if it's, let's say, the Montreal Canadiens, who have multiples, or even like the Flyers, just to use them because I know they have multiples. If it's pick 23, 24, 29, yeah, I think they'll do it. If it's top 15, no, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's funny because earlier in the week, I wrote about the number of teams that are probably looking for tandem or number one goaltenders, and conservatively, I had the list was 7, and then I did the same thing in terms of teams that were selling goaltenders, and it was around the same thing. Now the question is, it's the quality of the goaltender, and we know. Based on that, the value of what those teams are going to get back is, that'll be a factor, obviously. But Allmark's a Vezina winner. He's only got a year left at $5 million. There are teams out there like Utah or Seattle or Chicago. I mean, now Chicago's not a contender, but Utah wants to maybe contend for the playoffs in the next year or two. They'd probably have to extend Allmark, but they have 20 picks in the top 3 rounds in the next 3 years. And Seattle's, I think, got 15. A first-round pick for a quality goaltender, I don't think is that big of a price. And those teams can afford a $5 million cap hit. So I think they'll be able to generate a competition, and especially depending on what his no trade, he has a limited no trade clause. If he's open to going to New Jersey, which was one of the teams apparently he blocked before the deadline, or LA, then you're going to generate a market. So I think definitely they get a first round pick. Peter, what do you think about, we're talking about Allmark and the off season market and whether Boston could get a number 1 in a deal for Allmark?
I think it's a maybe, Mike. It all depends on who the team is and how desperate they are. Like, who's a team that needs to fix their goaltending right away and then has a first that they want to give up?
Right.
It's a tough one. Goaltending's a little bit of voodoo, right? It's not that Allmark isn't a good goalie, but a first is a first, and I don't know.
Here's what I would say.
Okay.
So let's say it's Utah. They're not giving the 6th overall pick this year. They might give one from 2 years from now.
Yeah.
I don't
even think they would do that because they don't know how good they're going to be.
Right.
But
they'll lottery protect it, but they're not going to give away a 6th this year. No way.
But here's an example. Toronto is looking for a tandem goaltender to put together with Joseph Wall. They have the 23rd pick in the first round. You think Boston's going to trade a Vezina Trophy winner in Allmark inside their own division to a team that they've played in the playoffs a number of times? It could be. I don't think they would. It's Phil Kessel in reverse, or it's well, not Phil Kessel in reverse because that it was a. I don't think they would do it. I don't know, but they would if they would do it with Detroit either, Kev, because it could make Detroit a playoff team if you add a goaltender of that quality.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and again, I think it's changed a little bit, and you kind of hinted at that as well. It really depends on where the draft pick is now. Like we're now really narrowing in on probabilities of those later picks of turning out to be players. Like now you're starting to see a lot of discussion about, the first 5 picks are something like 95%. And the first 15, well, they're just 70. But after that, you're falling off in terms of, getting below 50% about whether those are even going to be players in the NHL.
Well,
and the second round picks which have always thought to be a currency, now people are saying they're below 50 as well. And so I think that plays into it. But I did want to bring up, because, there is some actual a trade I believe it was Bruce Garriock, who's been in this business a long time and has, ended up with a lot of, pretty good trade rumors that turned out to be relatively accurate. And that is, he has suggested that maybe a deal between Ottawa and Boston can get done for Chychrun, who has 1 year left at a salary just below Allmark's, and their first round pick for Allmark. Now, that fits into what Peter was saying about who's desperate. I think Ottawa's desperate.
I would agree with that, Kevin. That's
so
astute analysis there.
Yeah, and then the in both those situations are similar because you got to sign the guy you're getting.
Right.
So that's similar, and Allmark is a little more valuable for that 1 year, especially to Ottawa, than Chychrun is. Not that he's not a good player, but I'm just saying Allmark's just more valuable because he's a goalie. So anyway, now all of a sudden we have the basis for comparison to all the other deals. So.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, okay, they have Korpisalo, who they signed to a 5-year contract, who was not good in the first year. But I don't think it can be blamed on him because Ottawa's defense is so bad. Their team defense, not their blue line per se, but their team and that's one of the reasons why Travis Green has been brought in. He I think will try to stress them playing more of a two-way game. But Anton Forsberg is terrible, and that's your second goaltender. So and he's under contract for another year. So would Allmark added to Korpisalo? The thing is, Kev, I mean, then you got $10 million in goaltending. That's an awful lot. Only, I mean, I like in that column that I wrote, I wondered, even though, he had a decent year in the American Hockey League switching to Florida, how long can Florida have $14 million in goaltending with Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight, who spent the entire year in the American Hockey League? You would think that either they're, especially with all the money that they I know there's a lot of money is coming out the books, but they have Reinhart to sign and Montour and all these guys. If you've got $3 million buried in the American Hockey League, that's something you sort of have to free up. So Bill Zito has got a choice of, do I hold on to this guy and lose somebody else who's an important part of my team, or do I move off Spencer Knight, get an asset for him, and then look for a young goaltender to develop behind Bobrovsky, who's 35 right now, but doesn't seem to be slowing down?
Well, I mean, I do think you got to factor in, and it's funny because we've talked about this before, but the criticism from the league of the media has always been, no one understands that how the cap works in conjunction better than the media, and yet we have the most difficult time moving with the cap. And while general managers, I mean, we keep hearing the cap is going to go up significantly over the next few years. So there are teams that are trying to figure out exactly what that is to plan for that, to have a good educated guess. But in the media, we don't do that. We still talk as if the cap is they wouldn't be able to fit $10 million worth of goalies. But if the cap goes up $10 million, then they can do that.
Right.
So we have to kind of think too, because that's how they're thinking. They're thinking over the next 2 or 3 years that it might go up 10. I don't 10 million. I just throwing it out.
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
I don't know that, but I'm just saying that they're thinking like that. So maybe they could do that. It's just a matter of how good you are at staring at your crystal ball or your 8-ball and figuring out what's happening with the salary cap, because I think Ottawa feels like they've got to get something done in terms of the postseason. And I mean, you're just, and we talk about this all the time, you're wasting Brady Tkachuk and Stützle. You're wasting their some really good years. I
mean, you had a bunch of guys, core guys for them extend, and all they're doing is watching them just keep drafting really high every year.
And there were some ridiculous rumors that popped up last weekend about Brady Tkachuk wanting out of Ottawa. I can't imagine. I mean, he signed a 7-year deal to stay there. He's making pretty good money. committed to the organization. He's their captain. I just can't imagine him after 1 or 2 years just bailing on that. But the Chychrun point is, I think, is valid there because he's got a year left. If they can't get him, and Kev, that's going to be the narrative of all the stuff that we're going to hear over the next month and even past that into July. Players who've got a year left on their contracts, teams that have players who are in the minors who can't clear waivers, and the decisions that those teams have to make. Like, for example, Nashville. UC Saros, 1 year, Vezina, a nominee, good goaltender, workhorse, has played over 60 games the last 3 seasons. He's got a year left at $5 million. They've got Askarov, who's had 2 really good years, and now you've seen him play with Milwaukee against Grand Rapids. 2 solid years in the American Hockey League. I don't believe he's waiver. He can clear waivers next year. I think he would have to. He's not waiver exempt any longer. They could have him as a backup, but is that really doing them any good? They have 2 assets there. One, I think, is a future number 1 someplace. The other one is a number 1. And that's the decision Barry Trotz has to make. Do I keep both of them? Do I trade one? Do I trade the other? What do I do? And I think that's going to be the narrative for Nashville this entire summer.
We'd have to look that up because I think he may be waiver exempt next year.
I'll check.
Check it.
I always look at it this way with the goalies. It's hard enough to produce them that a lot of times teams will hold on to that other goalie until they can't, until they absolutely can't, meaning, hey, they have to keep Saros in there. So now they're at the last year. They're walking Askarov to UFA. Okay, now I can't do anything about it. That's fine. Like Florida, there's no rush with Spencer Knight. Now, I don't think they're going to get rid of Spencer Knight. I think they still do look at him as the future, and I do think the minute Bob falls off, they have a guy. So I think that's still their plan.
Askarov has got 2 more years.
Yeah,
so they, but then what you have maybe is the internal pressure of this guy, a first-round pick, doing really well in the American Hockey League, and how pleased he's going to be. Now he'll, like I said, I think he's going to be in Nashville next year, and he'll probably be Saros's backup. But if he's playing 15 games a year, what good is that? I mean, now
why does the GM care? The GM doesn't care about that. The GM cares.
But the agent and the player do.
How long is he under contract?
The agent and the player do.
They've got him for a long time, so I don't think they're too worried about that. Plus, what is he, 22, maybe 21, 22?
22.
Yeah,
22.
There's no rush for them.
I mean, how many 22-year-old goalies do we see in the NHL?
Right.
So I don't think there's any rush there. I firmly believe, and I have not talked to Barry Trotz about this, but I firmly believe that they have not made up their mind what to do on Saros. I think it's troublesome for them. I think they think he's still in his prime. We
29.
don't.
29.
Yeah, we do not want any extended, and I do know this for a fact. The one thing that the Predators organization fears more than anything else is missing the playoffs for multiple years. They're fearful that their fandom that they've really built up will fall off, that it's all geared toward getting in that playoff. I mean, they do some fun things in the postseason, and everybody looks forward to that and getting that. So they don't want to lose that. So I think that will influence what they're going to do there. And I think it's why you don't hear as many rumors. I'm not saying they won't trade him, because they may finally decide that, Askarov is going to be the answer, and we can't be fearful of going with a younger guy because he's so talented. And I think it'll also come down to what can they get. I mean, can they get a really big haul on that? Because he's the kind of guy you could get, because he is only 29.
Coincidentally, Kev, I'm writing I'll be posting it after the show. And this wasn't an original thought, because David Pagnotta in the fourth period reported, some initial rumors, and then even a Nashville reporter asked Barry Trotz, and of course he can't say anything because it would be tampering. But he was asked about Mitch Marner, and the Leafs' potential of moving him. And if you think about it, the pieces might be there. They have draft picks. They have a lot of cap space. They could accommodate a Marner, a new Marner contract, an extension. There's former teammates there in Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen, Saros or Askarov. I think more Saros because he's an established goaltender would fit with Toronto if they could extend him as well. I mean, all those pieces fit. The problem is Marner's going to want to go there, and nobody knows that. And Saros would have to be open to extending with Toronto. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces there. And on top of everything, I don't think, and I haven't been told this, but I don't think a Marner deal is going to happen until after July 1st because almost, I think, $8 million is signing bonus that gets paid by the Leafs. His cap hit is 10.9, but his salary will be $775,000 after July 1st. That will be very marketable, even though the cap hit is big, to a team that is penny pinching to pay that guy $775,000 and then pay him big money the following years.
Mike, thinking about that with the Leafs, though, like Saros' body of work is known and understood. If it's a screw up, if this happens, let's just play along with it. Mm-hmm. Is this the kind of risk of locking Saros up when he turns 30 to a longer-term deal that the Leafs can afford to make if it goes wrong? Right? Like what? Like, think of the risk management in this. Like, if it doesn't work out, and what they need league average goaltending, okay, for the duration of that contract. What's that contract likely to be? 6 years?
Yeah. Say 6, 7.
So he's 36 years old.
Yeah, I'd say 6
right
years.
Into the gray zone.
Yeah, 6. He'd probably get a deal close to what Hellebuck got from the Jets.
Yeah. So around $8 million.
Around $8 million. Yeah. Sorokin, Hellebuck money, and you don't know whether this guy can play in Toronto, which we know is there's playing one place and they're just playing in Toronto and handling the pressure of Toronto.
The biggest failure teams like Toronto and Edmonton and stuff have made is not having the same kind of quality goaltender sitting in the minor leagues that we just talked about, right? It's the failure of the organizational depth. And are they better to try and amass some of those and hope they hit one than trying to take on a Saros and do that? I don't know what the answer is. I'm just asking the question. I think for a team like the Leafs, they're in such a perilous situation that it's almost lose-lose unless they get incredibly lucky, right?
Well,
take a risk and win on it, and then it shuts everyone up.
I mean, this is getting into the weeds here, but they have two really good young prospect goaltenders in Russia. They have Dennis Hildeby, who's a Swede, who they drafted a couple years ago, who played pretty well in the American Hockey League. So they have young prospects. The problem is they're a win now team, and they can't wait 3 years for these guys to get up to speed. At that time, Austin Matthews will be 30. So it's like they need to go out and get the goaltender now to be able to win now, and that's the difficulty.
Here's the only thing. The only thing, if I'm Barry Trotz or any GM in the league, I'll listen to this Marner stuff at the draft, but I'm going to talk to the other GMs. And if I don't feel like there's many offers coming to the Leafs, I'm not making them an offer either. I'll wait until he's a free agent.
Well, Kev, this is the thing, and with the whole Marner thing, but we can extrapolate this and talk about like Neckish and another thing. Now, Neckish doesn't have a no move clause, so that won't limit the market. Marner is in control here. He's got a no movement clause, and the first thing the Leafs are going to have to find out is, okay, if we don't sign you to an extension, where would you want to go? And that limits their ability to get the best for okay, I'll go to Chicago, I'll go to Nashville, and I'll go to Seattle. Okay, you got 3 teams, and you can maybe negotiate a deal and get something worthwhile. If he says I'll go to one team, then they're screwed because then.
No, I mean, yes and no. I mean, you still got to be able to make a deal. So I mean, it would be better if he gave them 3 teams for sure, or 4 teams. But if it's one, you got to deal with that. I would go to Marner and say, What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? And here's the number of their GM. I've told them you're going to call. Like I would just work with them, and they're going to they know they're going to have to give you something. Work with him, work with whatever team it is, and say, look, let's make a deal that works for us both. I mean, you need to probably move some salary to pay what you're going to have to pay him, moving forward. So I need to get something back that can help my team, and it's sometimes. Just openness is just the best way to go. And this is
100%, Kevin. And you address the problem head on in that, do you want to keep going down the road and living under this microscope and all the speculation, or do you want to be free of it? Right. And that's the soul searching for Marner. And if he believes he's this Toronto kid who, comes from the GTA and wants to succeed there, at the end of the day, if your goal is to hold the Stanley Cup, do you really care where you end up holding it? Like, it's the question that guys like Ray Bourque had to figure out, and all these legends. And it's kind of like,
I think the last possible minute because he wanted to do it in Boston,
right? And he had a couple shots at it, but it's not happening there. And I think there's a lot of people in a lot of players in a lot of different sports who, once they got away from the place they felt they were obligated to, things got a lot better for them. And and right now, like, someone's got to talk to Marner, and you need that person who's maybe not your agent, maybe not your mom or dad, but just that soothsayer in your life who just kind of gives you that perspective on things. And like, if Marner had been traded to Dallas right now, how would he be feeling? He'd probably be feeling pretty good about life, right? And you can say that about a number of players. And those are the things that need to get said. And Kevin, you hit it again. Like where do you want to be? Give me 6 options to play with. And if none of those work, then we go to the next 6. And if nothing works, then we're right back. And you can't say we didn't try.
If this plays out like it played out with Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary, which Trolling was the GM there, then Toronto will consider themselves fortunate, because I believe Tkachuk gave them a list of, I think it was 3 or 4 teams. It was Florida, it was St. Louis, I think Carolina was one, and there was one other team. And Treliving could, field offers from those 3 or 4 teams. And in the end, he took Huberdeau and Weegar. And in terms of talent coming back, that was a pretty good deal. Now, the contract that Calgary signed Huberdeau for, I think, is going to kill them for the next few years, because it was a way overpay. But, I think at that point they were sort of desperate to say, okay, everybody's leaving here, so we got to keep these guys. And we go out and sign Kadri and overpay him, and we sign Huberdeau and we overpay him, and now look where they are. But they did get value back for Tkachuk, who had a year left in a contract. If Marner does that, then the Leafs can pull off a good deal. But I don't see, that's the thing. He could decide, Peter, to go through a year of hell, because it will be a year of hell if he stays in Toronto and says, I'm not going to waive my no move clause, I'm going to stay here, and then walks away for nothing and goes and signs a 7-year deal someplace else. He'll get excoriated for a year in the media, and his name will be mud in Toronto, where his family is and he lives. And he can alleviate himself of that if he works with them and makes a deal. But will he do it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but why would he want to do that? You're going to do what's best for you.
Right.
So I do think he's going to try to work with them and try to get the best deal. If we're done with this, I got another trade I wanted to throw out there.
Yes.
And this is the Necas deal. And, there was a real interesting story I read in the Vancouver Province about, it almost sounds like a 1950s NHL style trade of Philip Hronek for Necas. How do you pronounce his last name? It is Necas? Okay. All right. But anyway, and that's a fascinating trade to me, because Hronek's coming off a great season. And they're actually, I looked up their projections. For those of you who don't know, AFP Analytics does a pretty good job of projecting signings in terms of what they can expect. And I think they just look at comparables. and they come up with it. And it's funny, but their comparables and their projections for their next contracts are very similar. They're saying the Hronek 7 to 7.5 on a longer term deal, and Necas the same thing. And on a shorter term deal for Necas, it is a $6 million sign. But anyway, very similar. And Hronek's coming off a good season, but he did play with an exceptional defensive partner.
Right.
There's a lot of potential with Necas. So what do you think of that sort of trade? And is it something, because to be honest, given the way their team is, I'm not sure they could afford to give Hronek 7.5.
Well, when you factor in that Carolina potentially could lose both Pesce and Brady Shea, so they're both UFA. You've got Brent Burns 1 year away from UFA and probably 1 year away from retirement. They need to bring a defenseman back, and if they calculated that they're not going to sign Necas to that long-term deal, then that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, it makes sense for Vancouver to give them a sort of a secondary level behind Miller and Pettersson and Besser. And, now there's talk about them bringing back Tyler Myers and maybe trying to bring Zadorov back, but he's going to cost them a ton. So they would have to fill that spot that Hronek is vacating. But I don't know, Russ, what do you think of that move?
I mean, I would do it if I were Vancouver. And yes, Rutherford was around when he was drafted. They're asking in the chat room, but he's not a center. So as long as you know he's not going to play center, then it's fine. If you think he's going to play center, then don't make that trade, because that's what Carolina gave up on him.
I'm reasonably confident. He's not a center.
Yeah,
just guessing.
Yeah,
and
so I think it's pretty fair, because it's not like Hronek's a number one either, right? So I think it's a pretty fair swap there. Ultimately, Hronek has a chance to still be the better value, because if he's going to continue to be a number two, then he's the better value. But I don't know if he continue to be a number two. He might really, be a 3. And so
the thing that came out of the playoffs was that Hronek didn't perform the way he did in the season. Mind you, what got everyone hyped up in Vancouver through the season was a Hronek Hughes pairing, and that pairing didn't even play that well in the playoffs either. No. So I think there's this recency bias with Vancouver fans and some of the talk out of there too. And you sort of have to wonder if that's something they would jump on right away, or if they'd sort of say, hey, do we need to be patient a little more? But I guess opportunity knocks, right? And you've got to do it when it's there. I often wonder, so one of the things that I've heard out of Winnipeg is looking at Necas too, and potentially trading Ehlers. And we know Ehlers is pretty much on the block. Why wouldn't Vancouver because the Jets are going to lose Dylan and they've got Hronek. Why wouldn't they try and do a deal with the Jets for Ehlers?
Because I think Ehlers is looked at as an underachiever, and that just isn't. And I wouldn't do that deal if I were them. I would surely do it if I was Winnipeg, because I'm getting rid of a guy who has just never come through in the way that he should. It's not like he's a bad player, but he's not even close to reaching his potential.
And ironically, Peter, I think it was Rick Dallowall reported that they think Dylan is going to head to Vancouver, because
he could head back.
Yeah, because now the thing is, Kev, I love the way these players, when they have this big year just before free agency and they're going to try to hit it big. Nikita Zadorov all of a sudden now is 7 years at $6 million. I mean, don't get me wrong. He had a great playoff. There's not even if I had $6 million that wasn't even mine, and I wouldn't give it to I mean, I like Zadorov. I like him as a defenseman. I'm not paying him $6 million. Not a friggin' chance.
No, but he probably is a $5 million just based on. Yeah. I mean, the average salary is 3.5. There's a premium to be a defenseman with a heartbeat, and
he's a big mean.
And he has a big shot when he wants to use it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Carolina is a real interesting team to me.
Oh yeah.
I think they're going to get Gunsel. I think he wants to
I think
play
he's
there.
resigning there.
Yeah, so I think they'll get him back, and I think they'll keep one of the defensemen, and then if they make this deal for Roenick, then they've got that covered as well. And Teravainen, I think, wants to come back too. Now, do they have enough money?
He comes back.
Yeah, so I think they have like 20-some million.
Yeah.
So for those 4 players, that might be enough.
But the question is, do they bridge Seth Jarvis coming off a 30-goal year, or do they try to lock him up long term? They could probably.
Yeah, they're bridging him. I don't see
no reason to go do that now.
Yeah, with a handshake and a wink, saying, "Look, we'll take care of you. You can see where we're at. We want to make another run at winning it. You're a big part of that, but we can't give everybody." I mean, again, I think honesty is always important when you get players. You bring them in and just sort of explain, lay it out to them.
Well, I thought going back to the goaltending discussion, Kev, I thought it was really interesting. Don Waddell was interviewed by Bob McCown and John Shannon on their podcast a couple days ago, and he let it drop that when Jarmo Kekalainen was the GM in Columbus, that he was talking about an Elvis Merzlikins deal to Carolina, which would lead me to believe they're not. At least Waddell, it was not happy with their goaltending with Kochetkov and with Freddie Anderson and Ranta if they were going to go after Merzlikins. Now, maybe that changes with the new GM there, but I mean, Merzlikins is another one of the goaltenders out there. I think obviously Omar, Saros. I think there's 5. I think there's 5 or 6 goalies out there, and it's going to be it's going to be musical chairs. You're going to see one team.
It's going to be hard to actually say that somebody here is an upgrade to what you had. It's not a huge upgrade. Any of these.
Well, you won't know. You won't know until into the season if it's an upgrade or not.
I mean,
you can go by previous work though. Until
I mean, is Merzlikins an upgrade over for anybody that's out there?
5.8. No.
Well, that's the thing. He's got term and he's had, but you have to factor in that Columbus has been in terms of their defensive game, they've been a disaster. So is it an accurate reflection of Merzlikins of what he's done over the last few years? I don't know. I mean, he looked pretty good for a little while, and then reality set in.
Yeah, he did look good. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I just want to touch first, not specifically on the games, but just the brand of hockey that is being played right now in the Final Four, Kev. I don't think I found it. It's really entertaining, really physical, and honestly, I have not found a playoff this entertaining in, I'd say, 15 years. I mean, it's like Rangers, Florida, even though there's, not big offensive. I mean, there's vicious hitting. There's great goaltending. I think Dallas, Edmonton, I don't think Edmonton is really up to Dallas, but it's 2-2 in the series right now. And McDavid and Draisaitl are fantastic. So, I mean, I love the brand of hockey that's being played right now. And I think that's a good thing for the NHL.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that you called it the brand of hockey, because I think one of the reasons why we like this is because we have the Tkachuk brand involved in it. And if you think back to his father, when Keith was involved in big games too, there was always a Tkachuk brand that he brought it all. And Tkachuk has been so entertaining during this, and just the way, like, he was born to be a postseason, player, and just the stuff, even like as silly as the mouth guard thing, just kind of added to it, telling Garen, I started to call him Garen, the Kreider, that he does sort of sometimes remind me of Garen though, that was the best move you made all night. Once you stole my mouth guard. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It's been really physical, and it's a great series, and and it's not over. Like, you don't know who's going to win that series. Both the teams are quality teams, and both of them have exceptional goaltending, and playoff or postseason overtime we're seeing, every night. It's really just been great hockey.
Russ, yeah. I don't think anybody could aggravate Rangers fans more by being the hero in Game 5 than Sam Bennett. Because
right. Sam Bennett, listen, he's been playing great. Here's the one thing I would say. So when Ranger fans want Matt Rempe to play, but then complain he's only playing 3 minutes, like that's the way it works. That's just the way it's going to be. He's not going to play 10 minutes a game. So I still would continue to play Matt Rempe. I understand why they're making some of these other moves. I still would have Zach Jones in there, especially they really could have used Zach Jones in the third period of last game to have somebody who could really move the puck, who hasn't played a tremendous amount or is hurt. And that's the thing about the Panthers and the Rangers. The Rangers are just limping now. They're starting to slag, and this series could be over next game. It might extend, but I don't think so, because I just think they've paid the physical price, and I don't know if they can go much further like that.
And Peter, Blake Wheeler played in Game 4, and Russ used the term limping. He was trying out there. I give him a ton of credit coming back from that injury, and they were trying to spot him, but then he got caught out there in overtime and took the penalty that ended up, causing the Sam Reinhart overtime goal. And now he wasn't in Game 5. I don't know if he'll get back in there, but the thing with Florida is they have more depth. I still think the Rangers, I think their top-end talent is just as good or better, and I think Shesterkin is better than Bobrovsky. But 1 through 12 up front and 1 through 6 on the blue line, I think the Panthers are better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But, it's you got to get it done.
Well, let's get to the other series, because I think it's turning. I do think the other series is turning. Look, Tanev's in a walking boot. That ain't great.
No.
I got to give Connor McDavid some credit, because for years everybody said he never piped up, he never said anything, and when somebody wanted to sort of tear down Darnell Nurse, he took the question. I forget who was sitting next to him. He goes, "I'll take this," and that's some good leadership. And I have been seeing a lot more leadership out of him in these playoffs than I had ever seen before. And I do think we're seeing some better play on the ice, and I do think the injury with Dallas is going to hurt him. The one thing about Ottinger, again, this is only because I looked at the historical stuff. He gives up goals against Edmonton more than he gives up against other teams. And that's why Edmonton has a great chance to win this series still.
Well, Kev, I think the series turned Edmonton won Game 4 and they wanted, Dallas scored the first 2 goals and then went to sleep. But I think the series turned when Rupe Hintz came back, because he has, in that game, in a span of 3 minutes, he wiped away a 2-0 lead from Edmonton. And I think they had pretty much control of the game, even though Edmonton ended up tying it late in the second period or early in the third period. It's like it's sort of like the same argument that I'm having with the Rangers and with Florida. I think the top end talent with Edmonton, Draisaitl, McDavid, Bouchard, may be better than the top end talent with Dallas, but Dallas is so much deep. They have Matt Duchene on the third line. They're deeper. They're better.
Yeah, Jim Nill has done such a terrific job. Like that, he's completely transformed that team. It wasn't that long ago that it was Sagan and Ben,
and that's it.
And now, this team is just deep, up and down. They've just got a lot of guys that can help them in a lot of different ways, and they've done Nill's done a terrific job. Doesn't really get enough credit, and I don't disagree with Russ a little bit. It feels like it's turning a little bit, but I don't think they're there quite yet. I still think this is a pick 'em series, but I know what Russ is talking about, because it feels like you've let them off the hook and now they're ready to go. So
right. When you're up 2-0 in the first period and you have fans in Edmonton shaking their head and you have them by the throat and then you let them go, and it's right at the end of the first, then you had an opportunity to stick a fork in them, and now all of a sudden they're enthused with confidence. But Russ, the thing with Dallas is Harley, first round pick, Stankoven, excellent. I think it was a second round pick. Robertson. I mean, part of this is not just free agent acquisitions and trades. It's they've drafted phenomenally.
Absolutely, and they've developed great. But they have to score 4 goals to beat Edmonton. Like every game, Ottinger's given up 3 a game to Edmonton.
Ottinger's made some. I mean, you're so down on Ottinger. I swear to God, he
must
have stolen your milk money or something. My God.
No. I like Jake Ottinger, but just look at what he's giving up. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, you're both right. Like Ottinger has not been as horrible as Russ has painted him, but he's right that you got to get 4 because Ottinger's given up 3.
Russ hated that 2018 USA Team USA World Junior team because it was Ottinger and Wall. He can't.
Shut up.
The thing about Dallas is, and this is the same with Vancouver. They are doing they're committing the sin of not shooting from anywhere and everywhere all the time on the Oilers. I don't understand it. Vancouver played themselves out of position when they had a potential goaltending controversy brewing, and Dallas is about to do the same thing. Losing Tanev is huge for Dallas. It's absolutely changed the way the last game went, and I expect like going up 2-0 and then just going into coast mode.
Yeah.
Like that, that is 100% a coaching failure to say, guys, you do not understand the pressure and enormity of how important this game is for the Oilers. You should have called a timeout after the first goal, or maybe even the second goal, and just you wasted it because that was your opportunity, and they let it go. And that's also part of game management, is finding these opportunities to slow down, get everyone collected and stuff, even if it's 30 seconds, 45 seconds with a little bit of time in there. Holy smokes. These are your windows of opportunity, and Dallas had it. They scored a third goal. It was done. That series was over. And that's how fast Evan came back. And the problem that you always have to remember with the Oilers is when you've got McDavid and Draisaitl out there at any given time, anything can happen. Anything.
No, but think about this, Pete. Corey Perry hadn't played in weeks, months. He comes in and he already has an impact on his first or second shift, and he gets a goal. That was massive because he already has a winning nature to him. That team needs a little push, and now you got Corey Perry to worry about because maybe he'll score next game too. Like that's a big ad for them.
But then you always have to worry about Evander Kane taking a stupid penalty and killing you. Okay, well, we'll end it there. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Pete Tessier, for Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.